What's up, everybody? MPL After Hours, episode 5. We are back from France, and we're doing this live on stream. Say hello to the chat. Say hello to the chat, and as well as the YouTube frogs out there. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, but mainly everything that went on with EWC and MSC, right? That's what we're going to be talking about here today. And as much as people are going to be interested about, the MLBB side of things with, TS alongside with Yangon Galacticos winning it all and a bunch of other opinions, we will address that as we go down. But this is from my POV, My POV coming into EWC was a little different because most people were excited. I was not so excited. Yeah, I was not that excited for it. And the reason why I wasn't that excited is because I was mainly worried about whether or not I would act like, number one, would the event actually go through? Because there was the war in the Middle East. So, knowing that the past 2 years was in Riyadh, there was a high chance that it either gets canceled or it gets moved to another place. But there was no confirmation until much later down the line. And building up to it, once we did get confirmation that it was getting moved over into Paris, a bunch of things were happening all at the same time for me, right? The things that I can't confirm, number one, I was highly depressed, like really, really depressed. The MPL season went by. It was just, another day of the job, no budget for English. That's totally fine. I'm still getting paid a decent amount. They pay my bills. I can't really complain about that. And then for the first time ever, if you've noticed watching my content, we got an RRQ sponsor. The truth of the matter is that I was getting very, very depressed because not only was it just realizing that this career is either going to hit a ceiling or I got to do something with the content. So I started doing the content and I tried to be consistent with it. And then RRQ joined in as a potential sponsor for a couple of 2 months, right? They were negotiating with me for 2 months. But even though in those 2 months, they weren't being hyper, we were both not being hyper responsive and, being able to sync up with our times, even though Indonesia is an hour before. So we were trying to make sure that we understood and agreed upon the deliverables alongside with how much I was getting paid. How much I was getting paid, I cannot admit. I made a whole video about that. Very happy that RRQ took a chance on me for that short period of time. Really, really sad because so we spent negotiating for 2 weeks, and out of those 2 months, I basically needed to do a month and a half, right? Did the other half, pumped out the videos. It was good. Second month, I wanted to kind of scale up. And I think that was my mistake, trying to come up with something a little bit more complicated for the sake of content. And it did not go well. All the raw footage was there. And unfortunately, it got harder and harder to get the content out. Number one, because of Diablo 4, that was an absolute, that stole so many hours of my life. But that's besides the point. There was also certain issues with EWC. In that case, it was with their travel team specifically, right? Because I was stressed out. It was a week before I was actually quote unquote supposed to fly, and I had no idea what my tickets were. I knew the flight date, I knew the flight time, but then there was no confirmation on the tickets. So I was sitting there, communicating back and forth to try and figure this out, and that did not add help with my depression. But as I'm having this conversation, RRQ hits me up and it's just hey, we checked the numbers, I think it only makes sense that we end this partnership, end this sponsorship. And I'm I look at the numbers and I'm I totally agree. You guys took a chance on me. Thank you so much for paying me. And I have the rest of this content, but if we're already ending the partnership, there's no point putting it up because all of it had just me selling RRQ, the code and everything and all the deliverables that would be part of it, right? So that was already eating at me at the back of my mind, just slowly just gnawing away. And then I knew for a fact that I was going to get really, really sad after EWC because of post-event depression, which I'll talk about later on after you understand everything that went through. And the last thing was that I had a job opportunity that was denied. Yeah, a job opportunity at EWC. I was offered another game title. If you're thinking whether it's a competitor, no, it is not the direct competitor. It has nothing to do with the Hawktois. Nothing to do. They did not offer me shit. But another game title did. The only problem is that it happens to coincide to be on the same week and the same dates as one of the events for MLBB. I'm not going to say which one it is. It was either Wildcards. It was either MWI, the Women's League, the Mobile Legends Women's Invitational, and then finally the Mid-Season Cup. Those are the three. You guys can speculate. Don't care. Essentially, it clashed with one of those dates, and I was not allowed to do the event. I say not allowed, but essentially what that means is you have the choice of taking the event and then not doing the rest of the other MLBB stuff, or you can just take it, or you can just do our MLBB stuff and not have to worry about it. And obviously, once the gun is like put to your head, you're like, oh shit, I better, do what is necessary. I, recently, can I say recently married? I can't say recently married anymore. Technically, it's been a while. It hasn't been a year yet. So, okay, fair enough. Recently married. And we got like this new office. We got, setups and stuff. And there's lots of things to actually pay for. So whoever, unfortunately, can most reliably give me the pay, I got to lean into that. So that ended up hurting relationships with the other game title that was talking to me, because they came to me first much earlier on into the year, and Munton, which is notorious for kind of like sending the contracts and like the details of everything really, really late, makes it difficult to plan my life. So man, doing an MPL after hours on stream is a bit of a no-go here, because I want to interact with chat, but I have to keep this within 40 to 45 minutes. I swear I will answer your questions in just a little bit. But what do you think might become the champions of M8? Well, dude, I'll get into that in after I'm done with this pre-recorded bit. EWC was such a mess, no wonder you are drained. It wasn't like as messy as what people think, but let me just give you an idea of what it looks from my POV. So, building up to it, all these things happened, right? They are losing the RRQ sponsor, having to pay the bills, being denied a job opportunity, and then I knowingly going to this event because it's the highest paid event of the entire year, on top of the fact that my iPad gets stolen. Yes, I was ready to go to France. I was ready to go to Paris, and I had planned everything. I'm like, okay, we're not going to bring a laptop. There's very low likelihood there'll be enough time to actually stream at the event. And I know that EFG is a little strict on the rules about what can be shown and what cannot be shown. So we can't show them the behind the scenes stuff, because now their competitors know their equipment, their show flow, their process and stuff like that. And that's P&C. So I'm not allowed to touch any of that or show any of that type of content. All right. That's number one. Number two, I was going to use that iPad. And the reason why I use CapCut is that way I can basically do this anywhere. I can basically make content anywhere, edit it, whatever, all of that. And I have had this iPad for the past 2 goddamn years. My mic is blowing up, but 2 goddamn years. And I was ready to go. First week in, I'm seeing Europe. I'm losing my mind because this is the first time I've ever been to Europe in my life. And France is a very scenic place. Like, have you guys heard about daylight savings? Because I've finally experienced it for the first time, and I understand why there's a trope of vampires, because goddamn, I got so sick of the sun so fast. And it's not like the sun was like excruciatingly hot. It wasn't like Riyadh where it felt like car exhaust wherever you went, but there were some days, especially with the heat wave, it was going up to like 42, dude. Luckily I missed out the 42 day. The highest that it went was like 37 degrees in France. And that shit was hot. Because France is designed in a way where they don't really need ACs. You wanna cool down, you go outside, because naturally it is cool out in Europe. But inside, in all of their buildings, it's designed to keep heat in. So going into their malls, it is just hot. You are sweating with like bajillions of other people who are also sweating. I could talk about this all day, but I've only got so much time. So with all that in mind, losing my iPad, lost the RRQ sponsorship, post-event depression, job opportunity denied, I was not the most happy getting there. And then the wildcards began, right? And I've worked with EFG or ESL for a decent amount of time. I worked with them for Snapdragon Pro Series. I've worked with them for EWC as well. And I'm very happy to work with them because they are professionals at the end of the day. And they have a slightly different work culture compared to what our production here in Malaysia, or basically what we've been working around the world with Munton, is like, right? Very, very different. Very, very different. They are straight to the point. They understand that EWC is like a logistical nightmare. Shifting everything from Riyadh all the way over to Paris is not a simple task. So every piece of the puzzle needs to fit together perfectly, and everybody needs to be giving 150%, right? Because that's just the way the event has to go. And not to say that other productions out there are doing less, but there definitely is like more layers to it for EFG. Like there's so many layers of approval before something actually gets done, because there's like 100 to 500 people all working on like the same event at the same time. So that was kind of crazy. But the broadcast itself for wildcards, it was straightforward, but it also felt like there was like nothing was really prepared. So we come in on week 0 of EWC, right? And it's not like we haven't experienced this before. Some of the other events we had, like EWC 2024 and not so much of 2025 because MLBB was later in the weeks. But if you came on week 0, things were still being built. Like construction was still going on. We had to wear hard hats and vests to make sure that we are applied to the safety standards of France, which again, the socialism of France is interesting because not only do they have like strict labor laws, but their taxing laws as well is also kind of interesting. Luckily, Malaysia doesn't have to, double tax. We have a deal with France. That was supposed to make the job easier to get paid by EFG. But, EFG is running with like 1,000 over different talents and players, having to approve visas and figuring out the individual nuances of each of the countries and how their tax works is not a simple task. It really isn't a simple task. So knowing all of that, it really kind of took me out of the event, right? Like we had an insanely tiring media day, one of the messiest media days that we've had in a very long time. The venue was being built as we cast it. I'm pretty surprised, but EFG did a really good job at kind of masking the sound, or like just, filtering out the sound of forklifts driving past us, some dude with a buzz saw. I remember like a good chunk of wild cards. Our biggest problem was they were testing out the smoke machines, the fog machines, alongside the sawdust that was being pushed up into the air by the buzz saws, and it was a really windy day. And there's no like internal, I mean, there is like a slight internal AC, but it doesn't really like work as often. And sometimes it's off even sometimes to save electricity because, they're a very green country for some reason, or now they're becoming a more green country. So a lot of these like small things started to add up. And I mean, I went through wildcards. I thought wildcards was like, all right, pretty simple, pretty fun. Big shout outs to some of the teams who finally kind of broke through the wildcards. Like, I'm very surprised that the Huns didn't make it that time round, but Falcons Mina did. So big congrats to them. They put in the work and, they got it off. They are setting themselves at a different standard compared to a lot of the wildcard teams. And that builds up into MSC. But before we even get to MSC, there was still MWI. Now, let me give you the timeline, right? Week 0 was wildcards, and then there's a week break, and then week 2 onwards is when MWI actually starts, right? So MWI, break, wildcards, break, MWI. In that break, a majority of our casters actually had to fly back. And mind you, we're from Southeast Asia. It takes roughly about 11 hours from wherever you are in Southeast Asia. From Malaysia specifically, if it was a direct flight, it would be somewhere along the lines of like, depending on whether or not you don't have any turbulence or any delays, it's roughly about like 12-ish hours or so. And that's the really scary part, because my God, you sit in a plane for 12 hours straight, you start to go insane. You play all your games, you've watched all your movies, and at a certain point, you're just locked into the screen and looking at the flight duration time tick downwards. Just keep on ticking downwards. Like, you feel like a crazy person, even though you're like probably sat next to 2 other dudes in your row, 3 other dudes in front and back of you, and you're just praying that this ends at some point in time. That was not fun. Really, really unfun. And then it turns into 16 hours if there's a transit. So yeah, if it is messed up, it is messed up, but like, that's travel, right? I don't particularly like it. It is not fun, but that definitely added on to the fact that I did not want to fly back. So some of our casters had to fly back to Southeast Asia and then fly back out to come and join MWI. And luckily, I have a wife. And my wife happens to be working with EFG as a talent manager, but for like Chinese talents. So there's no conflict of interest. The important thing here is that I figured out a way that I was allowed to stick around without having to pay euros to survive those 5-6 days, give or take. You know what? Let's just call it a week. That entire block of not doing anything. In that time, it was nice that my brother came from Germany with his wife to go check out Paris. So unfortunately, we were going around, and it was a pretty fucking hot day. It was hot. It was a really hot day. Got some nice photos. It was a good time, but it didn't really take me out of that depressive state. Like, I was kind of beaten down at that point, or it felt like I was beaten down. I think I was being like ultra negative to myself because like now I've lost like the one tool I had to kind of fill up this week of time. I wanted to like start pumping out content, and it just really just blew the wind out of my sail, man. I just had nothing in me. I was just going back to back and playing. I was playing Dot Hack GU on my Steam Deck, hooked up to the TV while I had a Bluetooth controller, so I can sit in bed and play the game without having to move a muscle. Like, I was degenerating for like a week straight. Well, 6 days out of the 7, and then one day to go out and hang out with my brother. And my wife would come back and be like, "Oh, hey, what have you been doing?" I'm like, "Nothing. I've been doing nothing useful. I'm shit. I'm fucking." And I start going into that self-deprecating recycling, just recycling things that I did in the past, and then it just comes back up in the present, and my mental was just not there. I mean, I'm glad that my wife was there. It made things a little bit easier, but it didn't change the fact that I wasn't producing content. That aside, MWI begins, right? New production. Now, how EWC works is that it is one giant, large stage. It is it's not really one large stage. It's like, imagine a giant warehouse where there are multiple stages inside of that gigantic warehouse. The entire purpose of it is that each game would have their own stage, and sometimes we transition and switch around and stuff like that, depending on the game title, depending on the priorities, and whatever the foundation has decided upon. But basically, each stage has a completely separate production. So the production that I work with in Wildcards was not the same as the one at MWI. And that started to become a problem because this new production were, let's just say a little new, a little fresh. They knew what to do in terms of the technicalities of things, but the way that the show is run is very different from what we are used to. And what do I mean by that, right? Imagine a reality TV show. Compare the reality TV show to esports. What are the similarities, right? We use cameras, clearly. We have personalities, clearly. But then the stories that they tell and the stuff like that, there are interviews, I guess, but the content, it's the content and the direction of the content that kind of gives the product its soul. And what I felt like, unfortunately, our producer, and like, not to discredit this producer as if he doesn't have any accolades, but it was very clear that he wasn't sure about the product. And I also got a lot of like feedback and heard it from the other talents from other game titles who happened to be working at that particular stage say the exact same thing. It felt like there was no soul. The content direction, the information relay was just not good. We had talents sitting around waiting for rehearsal, and then all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, production's going for dinner," and nobody told us, so we ended up sitting there for like an hour and a half doing bumfuck nothing because they just didn't bother telling us. The worst part is that our talent managers are coming frantically to us. It's like, "Huh? What are you guys still doing here? Wait, nobody told you guys?" Yeah, that was not fun. That was not fun. And did I get a little resentful? A little bit, but that's only because I was mainly depressed. I was depressed about a lot of other things. This was just piling onto it. But the expectations were not set for MWI. I think that was clear. We were talking about, like, a good example was like the Gen G versus Team Vitality. That particular narrative, for some reason, they kept on wanting to rehash it. They kept on rehashing from day 1, 2, and 3. We should have stopped it at day 1 and then used day 2 as a confirmation bias to see whether or not it will happen in day number 3. And that was the big issue because it felt like there was no build up to it. It was like, these are the two teams. These are the two teams. As if like Omega Empress didn't exist. As if there wasn't a 2024 champion that happened before 2025 and currently 2026. That's why I felt like there was a lot of lack of soul, right? But the one thing that saved this event, actually, because let me tell you guys, I have not done a women's division event for a very, very long time. I think I've only done it like once. Actually 2 times within my professional career. And those 2 times were like 6 years ago. Like, it was forever ago. Nobody hires me for MWI. Nobody. Even IESF, nobody gets me. SEA Games, nobody gets me. It's not because I'm saying no to these events. It's just that these events don't want to hire me. You know, and I get it. I get it. It's fine. It's fine. There's plenty of English talents out there. You need somebody with big social numbers. You need people who have this particular look. You want to be able to sell the event because at the end of the day, it is a business. I get it. I get it. You got to follow the budget, right? The problem is, well, not really a problem, but the good thing and more refreshing thing is that these women had huge personalities. Every interview, when they're walking onto the stage, even for the pre-recorded bits of content, it was just so refreshing to see how untainted this part of esports actually was, right? Like how do I explain this? Like you see a lot of the men's, right? They come up, they're like they like shake hands, they do like a semi fist bump, they're like the most you see is them in the middle of the game looking over at their opponent, screaming, and then sitting back down, right? These women, oh man, as soon as they win, oh yeah, boom, come on over, handshake, 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 and then they do the interview, and then they kill the interview as well. Like every woman who has showed up, even if they couldn't speak the language, had something decent to say compared to the men's division. And that's why like halfway through the event, I got invested. And let me tell you about the media day. I remember getting into an SUV because I was supposed to shoot a piece of content that I can't remember. One of them didn't get shown. One of them didn't get shown and got canceled. The other one happened much later down the line. So that first one, I had four players. I had four of the women's team players there. I think it was the gold laner from Vitality, it was Sayori. Oh my god. It was Mind. It was, oh my god, I can't remember the other two. This is so embarrassing. Because I had the exact same issue once I got into that car. Once I got into that SUV, I'm like, I don't know anybody here. I think that's Sayori. That could be. And then I did the normal thing where I introduced myself. But the one thing that I can appreciate about these women is that they are super talkative. They were all they all knew each other. They were all having fun, and I was there on the outside, and I'm sitting in this SUV, and it's just like, "Hi, my name's Gideon." Some of them like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of you," and I'm like, didn't want to chump check them because I might only see them once during this piece of content and then never see them again, which is usually the case with a lot of the stuff that I do. And then I whipped out the snacks. I'm like, who needs a snack, baby? I brought my bag. I stole a couple of snacks. I whipped it out. Instant brownie points. So easy. You can't tell me that the women's league is degenerate because, man, they are so nice. They're so nice. I loved it. I loved every second of it. After we got the content done, chit-chatting with them, then they started to play. Then I saw everything that happened. So refreshing. Once the event ended, right? Once MSC ended, 2 days break, been chilling with everybody else. Then, oh man, my depression was already, well, I wouldn't say at its peak at this point, right? But I think what tipped it over the edge was, keep in mind that EWC is like a summer camp for esports players, esports people, right? In the esports space, and that's what's really cool about it. Like I was sitting down, and it happened to be like week 3. Wait, sorry, no, yeah, week 3, week 4. And then you see some of the fighting game talents come by. Some of the PUBG talents start walking by. And I'm an oldie. I'm about to be 30 this year, right? I'm becoming Unk status very, very quickly. And I'm very happy that Muntun has allowed me to do so many internationals, but I'm especially thankful for EWC because this is the one time where we can actually interact with multiple talents from many different regions, right? I got to see Vicious. I got to see Tasty Steve from fighting games. Literally from fighting games. There's no better way to explain who these guys are. They are legendary casters. And fighting games has always been one of those like guilty pleasures that I get to watch on the side. Like, you know how there's like, oh, there's Mobile Legends is your professional job. You got to treat it a certain way. And then you have like the things that you do for yourself. Fighting games is for me. Like, I'm not great at fighting games, but I love watching it. Because you don't need like that much brains to understand that once the life bar hits 0, the other guy wins. And you got to win 2 rounds. That's it. Or a best of 3, whatever. The point being is, you see people like Daigo Umehara. You see Justin Wong just walk by. I gotta have a conversation with Vicious, Steve, Blaze, alongside with Yipes. Like, oh my god, the GOATs were there. Yankos was there. Oh, Broken Blade, like so many. Oh, Mr. Double Lift himself. Like every hero in esports or every possible person that you could admire in esports was there at EWC. And that was so fucking cool. That is something that no other event has given me the sheer joy of putting me potentially in front of the greats, you know. And I think the one thing that I'm disappointed about is the fact that my social interaction skills is still so shit. Oh my god. Two things. My social interactions are pretty awful. Like I don't know how to talk to people that like again, people that I respect with them not knowing me, I don't know how to interact. I don't. If they know me and I don't know them, it's a lot easier, dude. It's so much easier to talk to somebody that way. And especially if they are like at the same, like, let's say a new caster comes in, I would treat you as if I'll treat you like another caster. The prerequisites are very, very easy to have a chit chat with another co-caster. But when it's someone you admire and respect, I get it. It's tough. It's tough. I remember on my final day, once MSC was done, we were hanging out by what we call the ławka. In Polish, that means the bench. There was one particular bench outside of our hotel that we all hung out at. Every once in a while, some people went there to smoke. Some people went there just to chit chat. For us and the Mobile Legend talents and a majority of the talent managers there, it was just basically Player Lounge 2.0, something that they were missing in 2024. 2024, we had the talent and Player Lounge. 2025, it was only the Player Lounge, and all the talents were at a separate hotel, but we still didn't have a lounge to hang out with each other, so you just had to go into each other's rooms, right? Then finally, 2026, we have ławka, and it was great. It was awesome, and the second best part is that France has no laws against drinking out in public. So we just got a bunch of beers and hung out on the outside when the weather was good. It was sick. It was so sick. So I'm not, admittedly, it was the last day. I was not very sober. I go up because I've met and talked to both Steve alongside with Vicious, like casually, but like, not really. We're not like tight or anything of the sort, I was still very in my head, so I'm just like listening to their conversation, interjecting every once in a while, just trying to look like a normal fucking human being and not pretend that I'm like a super fan of them to a certain degree. Like, oh man, I was telling Steve like, hey, it's my last day. I just want to let you know. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I just want to let you know that I'm actually a really big fan, of your work and alongside with Steve. And I was kind of pouring my heart out to him a little bit. And this was just with Vicious, Steve, and like another. I think it was. I'm not sure if it was Blaze or somebody else, but essentially some of the fighting game casters were going to go out, and they were hanging around the ławka to interact with people while they were waiting for the crew to get together. So I was telling this to Vicious, and as soon as I see Steve, I wanted to tell him the exact same thing because this was my final day. I'll never get another chance to do this again. And Vicious was so nice about it. He's such a cool guy. He was also mentioning, it's like, love, brother, love, and they all start moving away. I wanted to say something to Steve, but he already like walked past me at that point. I was like, oh fuck. What? But how will he know what's deep down in my heart? Shit. And then as they cross the bike lane to get into their car and they're waving off to people, and this is after I'm like shaking hands. I was in the middle of shaking hands and like ending the conversation with Vicious, and then I tell Vicious, "Hey, let Steve know what I said." Ah! I could have delivered it in so many different ways, but that's how it came out. So now all I know is that well, I don't know if Vicious thinks I'm fucking weird or not, but hey, I got to say what I got to say. And that wasn't even the first weird interaction that I had. Oh my god. Something with me and my idols that I just can't get past. Justin Wong, for an example, the first time I saw him outside by the ławka, I went up to say hi. Vicious and Steve were also there, and I already shook Vicious Steve's hand earlier because they were here much earlier for Fatal Fury. We caught them on the last day. They flew out and then flew back in for Street Fighter. And then Justin Wong happened to also be one of the KOLs there. Their introduction, and then we met some of the hosts as well. So new people, okay, also had to introduction. We get to Justin, and he's just like, oh, hi, I'm Justin. And I'm like, I've shaken everybody's hands at this point. I shake Justin's hand, and I'm like, holy fucking shit. And you know what I say to him? I'm like, you don't need no introduction. You're a legend, sir. And then I pat him I do the quick hand pat, just the thank you for your service, sir. And I never introduced myself. I didn't even get to say my fucking name. Ah! Oh my god. I was dying on the inside. I was dying on the inside. I shook his hand. I shook his hand. I shook the legend's hand. And then I didn't even bother introducing myself. He probably thinks I'm just some rando. Some fucking rando on the sidewalk. He doesn't know that I cast Mobile Legends. He has no idea who I am. Oh, I wanted to die. I wanted to die. I wanted to die. There, and let me tell you, that's not the only. I could keep. Did you parry his handshake? Fuck off. Fuck off, Ray. That's funny. That's very funny. Very funny, Ray Ash. But no, I kind of cockblocked myself in that sense. There were many different like weird interactions that I had at EWC, but I think 2026 really takes the cake of like really socially awkward compared to just saying some heinous shit and like people happen to catch by because they're walking past. That happened a lot in 2025, let me tell you. That shit was funny. But then with all of that happening, all the depression and all the imposter syndrome, like it wasn't helping me. And then MSC happened. Boy, was this the ultimate MSC. This was a crazy MSC. Like I've never seen a tournament go in the most narratively positive way. And I mean obviously, like we all saw what happened in MSC. I don't think anybody was expecting it. The amount of guest coins just gone into the aether could bankrupt the country. That's how crazy it was. So we get to MSC, right? Now MSC is about like is about 2-ish weeks long, right? So it's a much longer than the 1 week in MWI in a couple of days for the wild cards. But as soon as we get there, this production, they were veterans. They knew exactly what they wanted. They understood that they had resources, but at the same time, they weren't 100% sure. They knew what the esports product was, but they didn't know like what the MLBB specific product was supposed to look like. So we did a lot of back and forth to make sure that things were going to go smoothly. We had an analyst segment with the telestrator that was super sick. Really love that because again, it's one of the few times that an analyst can really show themselves compared to a play-by-play where it's just as soon as the fight starts, you can like put on a show. As an analyst, it's a lot harder to make yourself stand out in game. So outside of the game is where you really have to show that personality, and that's why I love that analyst segment and telestrator. Not to mention the reaction to the to the big teams getting rolled as well. When SRG lost, I was like, oh shit. This might be real because they were looking like traditional Brawly. The new patch had already come in at that point. We saw the build up from MWI, but didn't think it was going to change it that much. And then we saw the new tech that all the teams were trying to show off. Hirara was just fucking disgusting. There was no way to kind of keep up with that shit. And then everybody was going back to assassins. It was awesome. Everybody was fighting. Everybody was using macro. It was about execution on top of macro, on top of small leads. Man, it was great. Like narrative-wise, by far the best MSC that we could possibly have. As the brackets continue to go up and up and up and up, right? Team Spirit looked like in good position. Yangon Galacticos, I was also like, maybe this might be the team. Maybe this might be the team. If they knock out the Falcons, they knock out Onyx, we've got everything set up for a non-major region to be in the grand finals. A no major region grand finals, which has never happened before in our space, finally happening in 2026. And the fact that Team Spirit worked this hard to look that clean, I was impressed. Yangon Galacticos, they have hands, dude. The Burmese got hands. Mother Kamai, don't fuck around. I mean, we always knew this, but now it was the first time in a long time that another generation of the Burmese were making an attempt to try and recreate what happened in M2. Luckily, Blink was there. Blink was, the veteran of that squad, but he had his ups and downs within the games. But the fact that there were no major regions was super impressive. The fact that, the two teams that from two regions who have been so close every single time, like if they just win one more series, they get to basically go into the quarterfinals, semifinals, and then almost guarantee themselves into the grand finals. This was the one time that their bracket was not only were there hurdles for both sides, so nobody had like an easy way to get to the top, but the fact that they overcame it and still put on a full best of 7 at the grand finals. I could not have been happier. Now, I don't know if Mirko has talked about this before on stream or such, but because we were doing the grand finals, right? We had to prepare the final lines. One of the final lines we had prepared for Team Spirit, because it was looking like, Team Spirit was going to do something here. Like, it was looking to be a sweep. And then Yangon Galacticos buy 2 games back, turn it, then it goes 1 and 1 again, and then it went over to game 7. I think by game 5 is when we realized, oh shit, we have the TS line ready, but we don't have the Yangon Galacticos final line ready. And that was a big issue. So we were like going back and forth between the games, workshopping lines. We were already workshopping Team Spirit's one, but now we were working twice as hard to make sure that both teams had one, because we don't know who was going to win. And then not to mention that we had to talk to production halfway in the middle between the games to ask them how much time do we actually have for the ending, so that we can get our final lines down before we throw it over to the analyst segment, throw it to the stage for the trophy lift. We were all figuring that out while the grand finals was happening. So that not only was stressful, but I think it was the necessary pressure that we needed, because I think we killed that final call. I think it could have been like executed slightly better, but that's just me being very nitpicky. Very, very, very nitpicky. What I have to say about this is I'm very happy for them. I'm happy that these 2 minor regions, well, quote-unquote minor regions, were able to get like a massive victory here. And because of this victory, I think that it's tough to deny. It's tough to deny the existence of European MLBB, the existence of Myanmar as a potential major region. But I think that, I'll save this for another video about, the MPLs, the MCTs, so on and so forth. I'll talk to whoever on stream about that. But for now, that's just the sum up of EWC and the entire event. And as soon as that grand finals, like, it could have been more perfect, I fly back to Malaysia, we do Digital Games. It goes exactly how I expected it because of the way that the meta works right now. It's very coin flippy. Unfortunately, some of the favorites didn't go as far as they wanted to go. Other major regions started to pick back up now that they understand the meta a little bit better. But by all means, I think it's a very good showing of where the meta is going. And more importantly, I think Muntun has finally come up with a patch that actually forces us to really think about our macro and execution from every point of the game, which is great. I mean, obviously, there's some things I personally would have tweaked, but hey, I'm not the game developers, right? I'm just the caster. I'm just the witness. And I'm glad that I was able to witness MSC, because I think without it, I probably would have done some heinous shit in France for being depressed. Like, I was getting to that point. I wouldn't do suicide is not an option for me. And let me just tell you guys that if that's what you think I'm implying, that is not an option. That is not something that I am doing. But more importantly, it helped me work through it a little bit more. It got me genuinely excited for MLBB all over again. When you do it for this long, you kind of get burnt out on Mobile Legends and anything related to Mobile Legends. But for the first time in 2026, I felt like, my God, this is a really, really interesting meta. And I am reignited for the game, which is why I'm, coming up with more MLBB content and talking about this stuff as much as I can. Once again, this has been the MPL After Hours, episode 5. I'm back from France. We're back on doing the content. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.